Welcome, everybody, to episode number 67 of the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Tempty. Today, we've got an old friend of mine, Ed Clark. He's joining us as our final guest in our mini-series on the importance of building the skill of business acumen in individuals and in teams. Ed is group president at Colibri Group and is responsible for Becker Professional Education, the United States' largest accountancy training organization. Thank you, Ed, for sharing your talents and insights with us today.
Great to be here, Andy. Really looking forward to the conversation and great to be here.
Yeah, just in full disclosure, Ed and I worked together at Kaplan previously, and I know a bit of your story, Ed. But as we always do on the show, can you let our listeners know your story?
Yeah, certainly. I'll start from the very beginning. So, born and raised in New Orleans. Came from a family of 6. I was the youngest of 5 boys and 1 girl. And my family had a family-run business. It was actually food manufacturing, mostly indigenous to Louisiana. So got into the business world at early ages. Remember going through primary school and secondary school and even post-secondary, joining my family and working. And my mother and father both worked there, as well as 3 of my brothers. So really got to experience business very early in my career and really learned a lot from that and the work ethic they had. I was involved in tech, the executive committee. It's similar to YPO, but I was part of a local chapter here. And had my own business, a picture framing business that I'd started when I went through college. And I met a gentleman there that owned a professional education training company, and he was in the maritime training business. He prepared Coast Guard candidates for their licensing exams and had a great formula to do it, and was looking for somebody to start up financial services training. And I joined his organization. That company was called Examco. And we started preparing Series 6 and 63 candidates for their licensing exams. Back then, it was NASD that regulated that. Now it's FINRA. And we started with what is now today Primerica. At that time was A.L. Williams. So very early on, shipping around 5 1/4-inch disc, then the 3 1/2, then to CD-ROM, and then on to online training. And then continued to stay in a professional education. As you said, we spent many years together at Kaplan, and today I lead the accounting ecosystem at Colibri. So been quite a great journey, and grateful to have that experience and have my life partner, my wife, Angela, and our 3 children, now all young adults.
Well, that's great, Ed. Wow, that's a lot of brothers to be dealing with. Fights in the backyard, lots of roughhousing, I would imagine.
Yeah, my sister was first, and then the 5 of us came after. And my mother always said, "I got my treat, then my treatment."
Yeah. Well. So, Ed, what can you share? I always ask this question. If you had to pick one event in your life that was just a real accelerant for your career, what would that be?
I would say it was my first acquisition that I was part of. Like, it was back in 1998. I had been a couple of years with Examco, and we were doing well. We had we had the maritime training business, and now financial services up and running, and just added a nursing business. And we identified a target on the West Coast, Merit Publishing, and I was given the opportunity to be the lead on that and do the due diligence and take it all the way through closure, and then spend a tremendous amount of time in California really immersing myself into the business, understanding it, and integrating it into the company. So it was our venture into insurance licensing and continuing education. Just really a great experience. I can't thank Brand Houston enough for giving me that opportunity. I was much younger at the time, obviously. But, obviously I'd given him enough confidence in me to take a shot, and really worked out well. But I think that's what gave me the confidence to keep going in my career, excelling in it, and just, really embracing professional education and helping people advance their careers and improve their way of life.
That's wonderful. So let's get into the topic at hand. The topic is business acumen. When you hear this phrase, what does it mean to you?
I would say business acumen to me is understanding how the business functions and the key factors that drive its success. When I think about business acumen, I think it's a combination of knowledge and skills. And as I just mentioned in my story about Merit Publishing, it's about immersing yourself into the business, whether that's listening to a student call in, a client conversation, experiencing a delivery from the company, but really immersing yourself in the business to understand how it works. And in order to do that, in that immersion, you identify the strengths of the organization and the opportunities where you can make a difference.
Yeah. Ed, that's a fantastic definition. And I love that, you alluded to a SWOT analysis there at the end. And I don't think SWOT analyses get quite the attention that they deserve. We used to use them quite a bit. So I would encourage our listeners to go back and think about, sharing their SWOT analysis with their teams. So in your assessment, we're both educators, and business acumen is really, really important to the success of any business and the success of an individual within it. But if we dial the clock back, what needs to change in primary and secondary education to improve business literacy, which is the precursor of business acumen?
I would say the number one thing is real world experience. Now, how do you do that in primary? To me, I think it's people relation skills, that our children are able to, work with each other in team environments, communicate, really work well together as they transitioned into secondary, to really get a real world experience. I think that in my background, it was one of the things that I had the advantage of having a family that had a business. Not that I was there full time. I ended up doing something else in my career, but I had the opportunity as in primary school and high school to go there during the summers, or whether we had a holiday and the business was operating, but really to see how a production line worked and deliveries were made and customers paid and how those payments got recorded. Just, really a big part of my learning, and how we can make that part of the institution of education is key. I just really think that is, I've seen in my career that students come into organizations or have just completed college and have done fantastic, and they enter into the workspace and don't even know where to begin. And probably that
Right.
biggest gap is working with their peers, working with their leaders. And a key part of that is just building those people relation skills.
Yeah, totally agree that the experiential nature of the world of business and getting that instilled in our children instead of or alongside preparing for further educational adventures and investment in their life. But I think the pendulum has swung too far in terms of college prep and passing tests and making sure that the academic chops are there. We need to be doubling down on the experiential real world business chops in our students. So let's now move on to post-secondary school. And I like to run these thought experiments. Imagine you have a technical college or university chancellor right in front of you right now. What advice would you give to them to set their graduates up for success in the workplace as it relates to business acumen?
I'm going to follow my same train of thought there. Like, it is key that they have work experience. We have to formalize that as part of the curriculum. Apprenticeship, the UK has done a very good job of including apprenticeship into technical education. But the combination of this technical education that we all need the foundation of and have to demonstrate proficiency in is key. And then combined with real work experience, where you have to bring back that experience and articulate that back in an educational environment so that your fellow students are learning from that experience, as well as you're able to demonstrate that you really grasp something in that real world experience. And then take it on to something you and I have been involved in for many years, but how do you get a certification while you're still in college? Now, not all certifications or advanced designations allow you to do that. While you're still in college, you have to be a graduate or even a master's to obtain some of those. But there are many in all industries, I would venture to say, but certainly the majority where you can achieve some type of credential prior to entering into the workforce.
Yeah, stackable. You and I have called it stackable modules that bolt on to a university degree. But we really have to start thinking about how we weave those into the flow of an educational experience, and have those industry recognized credentials that show, that prove, not beyond a shadow of a doubt, but give that signal of workplace competency, I think is very important. Ed, we're going to take a really short break here to insert a commercial for my book, Balancing Act, and we'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andrew Temte. In my book, Balancing Act, Teach, Coach, Mentor, Inspire, I explore the characteristics required of leaders who must find balance between strength and vulnerability, confidence and selflessness, passion and measure, and leadership and followership. Balancing Act is available today at Amazon.com. And we're back. So we talk a lot on the show about alternative paths to workplace competency, skills-based hiring, and the reskilling revolution. Business acumen, much like emotional intelligence, relies on a portfolio of subskills. If you had to pick two subskills that are absolutely essential to improving business acumen, what would they be?
I would go back to my primary education, and I would say it's people relations. It has been a big part of my career, and I think the piece that has taught me the most in business is understanding individuals, their types, how to communicate with them, and how to hold people accountable, develop them. Our biggest responsibility as leaders is developing our people and understanding those individuals and working closely with them is key. Second to that, I would put financial acumen, like understanding the impact of our daily activity and to a point of accountability. It is really having that financial acumen is, key to success. So understanding how that business works, our revenue, and then all the way down to our operating income. But learning that early is key to success. So I'll boil it to those 2 points of people relationships and financial acumen.
Well, thank you for the plug for our previous mini-series on financial acumen. It's a great tie-in, and I 100% agree with you on the importance of those 2 subskills. As a leader of a business within a larger private equity organization in education, you sit at the intersection of many functional areas. You've been chief operating officer before. What advice do you have for business leaders to build business acumen in their teams? Where do you start specifically?
Empower them to solve problems. It is back to my example of Merit Publishing. It was, really empowering me to, take the reins and solve problems. It was an opportunity of how do we integrate, but it's that immersion into the business and pushing your people to immerse themselves enough to identify, back to your comment, Andy, on the SWOT, but our strengths and those opportunities for improvement, those internal components of every business, and certainly support them in their road to solving these problems, but truly empower them to solve a problem that makes a difference. Identify the measurable goals, track progress along the way, and measure the outcomes. And we measure those through whether it's a student success or financial performance.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you that you brought that up, because a lot of managers, and I use that term very purposefully vis-a-vis leader, they become firefighters. And, I talk a lot about the accidental manager who, takes over for their teams when things don't go right. You talked about empowerment, but if you're a manager who thinks that the only way that it gets done right is if you do it, you're not doing your team members really any favors. You have to let people have to let your teams fall down every now and again. Do you have anything else to add on that?
It is. The communication piece is key to it. So it's allowing them to present their thoughts on their findings, what they've identified, laying out a plan, and providing input to the progress. The pieces I mentioned before about those measurable goals are key. So it's really letting those teams or individuals think through those outcomes and that they're meaningful. And then, whether it's a coaching opportunity there to make those really measurable would be the piece I would add to it.
Yeah. So let's run another thought experiment. Suppose you've got an individual contributor or middle manager in front of you right now who's questioning why they should invest the energy to learn more about the how the business functions across departments. How would you coach them to make that investment of themselves?
In my time, my career, my leadership, data has been a big part of it. I've been drawn to data. I like to, see measurable outcomes and metrics that indicate success or drivers of success, I would mentor that individual and say engagement. Organizations that are engaged drive better results. And the reason for investing in yourself and the organization is to have a fulfilling career. And a fulfilling career is driven by organizations that are highly engaged, so that they have a focus on what matters most, the clarity around that message, and that it's cascaded throughout the organization. When everybody is clear on the what matters most message, and it's effectively cascaded throughout the organization, your opportunity for engagement is much greater. And I think that's a great reason to continue to invest in yourself and the organization, is the outcome of an engaged organization. And it's fulfilling personally and professionally.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about this phrase "quiet quitting," and I've been very vocal. I've not been quiet about it needs to be okay to just do your job as outlined in the job description, and it has to be okay to not be fully engaged by the definition that many of us use for "quote unquote" engagement. I like what you're saying about bringing folks into the message of the organization, aligning with communication. But you and I have talked about that movable middle of the organization. I'm just kind of poking at this question a little bit more. How do you take somebody who's in that movable middle, who is doing their job, and really getting them excited about the organization and driving that engagement?
It is, I would say, back to clarity. It is, and some individuals may select out, but are we bought into the vision together? Like, I am here because I want to change individuals' lives and help them advance their career and improve their way of life for themselves, society, the world. And is that what makes your heart beat? And is that something that, is really core to your soul? And then select in or out. But first, our responsibility as leaders is to be clear about what that vision is. Create that clarity, communicate that, and then invest time in hiring, training, and retaining. It's, back to my comment about our number one responsibility is developing our future leaders. Creating the right succession plan. But to do that, you have to have individuals that have bought into the vision, believe it, it's true to their core, and they're engaged about it.
Thanks, Ed. I loved how you said, how your heart aligns. Does your heart sing? And that's about that alignment of the purpose of the business with your personal purpose. So thank you so much for that. Final question. In my forthcoming book, The Balanced Business, I talk a lot about the balancing act between organizational trust and accountability. As we close out today's episode, how does improved business acumen help improve accountability and ultimately improve organizational trust?
Certainly, the accountability comes from the pieces that we've talked about earlier, which are those core metrics that judge our success every day, whether those are daily metrics, weekly metrics, monthly metrics. But that is where accountability comes from. And then creating a framework that is easy to access, self-serving, where everyone on the team can start their day and pull up their dashboard of how we judge our success and hold ourselves accountable. Is really key, those metrics there. And then back to my comment on clarity, focused on what matters most, and bringing that to the organization, to their individual teams, and just reinforcing that clarity.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Ed. We're very much aligned. We worked well together when we were at Kaplan. I'd like to close out today with a personal thank you to you for everything that you've done to help individuals all over the world achieve their goals. I'm very proud to have done that work with you. So thanks for joining us today. My name is Andy Tempty. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all podcast streaming services, as well as now we're out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, share as you are able, and we will see you next time.